wait for you?
Preferably.
Since he's running the beginning of this.
Steve.
Okay.
Do you care to stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we'll do the roll call. Mr. Davidson?
Here.
Mr. Isgrove?
Here.
Mrs. Baker?
Here.
Mr. Sprague?
Here.
Mrs. Matthews?
Here.
At this time, we have 4 newly elected board members from the November election taking office tonight. And at this time, we'll do the oath of office for all 4 of you at the same time. If you would like to stand and raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Margaret Baker,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge my duties as
discharge my duties as
member of the Board of Education
member of the Board of Education
of the Hamilton City School District, Butler County, Ohio,
of the Hamilton City School District, Butler County, Ohio,
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
and in accordance with the laws now in effect
in accordance with the laws now in effect
and hereinafter to be enacted
and hereinafter to be enacted.
during my continuance in said office
During my continuance in said office
and until my successor is elected and qualified.
until my successor is elected and qualified.
Congratulations to each of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point in the meeting, we need to appoint a President Pro Tem for the
May I
election.
interrupt for a second, Mr. Hancock? I think you skipped a portion on the agenda under superintendent comments.
Well, I'm looking. No, I think I'm dead on.
Actually,
Roll call.
it was before. oath of
Superintendent
office.
comments? Superintendent, he's C, you were D.
Huh?
He's C, you were D.
I'm going right down through this organizational thing. you
It's
gave
on
us.
Before we
board,
move
it's on
forward,
board docs.
Oh,
January is School Board Appreciation Month, and there couldn't probably be a more difficult time to serve in the public than what we have gone through during the 2021 school year. And you know, each one of you should be commended for not only your leadership, but also servicing the 9,500 students that we have here in Hamilton City Schools. And on behalf of myself, the school administration, our teaching staff, and our support staff, we all want to say thank you for the leadership that you've provided throughout this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Now, we would also like to honor each of you with a plaque to commemorate, you know, not only the last year, but also just our appreciation. So, Mr. Sprague,
Thanks, Mike.
Mrs. Baker,
thank you, Mike.
sorry, Mr. Davison. Mrs. Matthews,
Thank you.
you're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
And last but not least, Mr. Israel. Thank you, sir. I thank each of you for your continued leadership and service, and, you know, 2022 is going to be the best year that we've had, so thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank
Thank you.
Mr. Hancock, you can now proceed.
Thank you, sir. At this time, we need to appoint a president pro tem for election of Board of Education president.
I make a motion that it be Mr. Hancock.
I second that.
Motion by Mr. Isgro, second by Mrs. Baker. Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
At this time, we would need a nomination for Board of Education president.
I would nominate Lauren Sprague as president.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Mr. Davidson, second by Mr. Isgro. Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague, would you like to take over?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Hancock. At this time, I'd like to take a nomination for the Board of Education vice president.
I would nominate Margaret Baker.
A second.
Mr. Hancock?
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Thank you. At this meeting, during this meeting, we established the 2022 meeting dates. And in accordance with Section 113.15 of the Ohio Revised Code, the Board of Education determines the time for holding its regular meetings. Our regular meetings shall be held at least once every 2 months. Commencing January 13th, 2022, the Hamilton City School District's Board of Education regular meetings will be held on the dates and times provided to each individual in attendance. All information is available on the district website for those at home and the board docs agenda for tonight's meeting. All regular meetings are scheduled to take place at 533 Dayton Street, Hamilton, Ohio, 45012, unless otherwise noted. The president may change the meeting's time and place by notifying the treasurer, who shall immediately post the change and inform the media. Special meetings may be called by the president, treasurer, or any two Board of Education members by serving a signed written notice of the time, location, and purpose of the special meeting at least 2 days before such meeting in compliance with Section 3313.16 of the Ohio Revised Code. In the packet that's available tonight to those in the audience, we have a packet of all the dates of our meetings. I'd like to take special note that the first meeting typically of the month of our 2 meetings will be an open meeting, but we will be in executive session. And the second meeting of the month, which is the 4th Thursday of the month, as on the schedule, we will be going into executive session, and then approximately 6:30 going into our
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, I'm sorry, looking at the wrong day, 6 o'clock for our open session meeting. In the packets, there is a small change on July, it's written as July 8th as being an open session, and that is actually going to be on July 7th. But I think that's been corrected online. Yes. Most regular meetings or sessions are going to be live streamed by TV Hamilton. We hope to have all of them, but most of them will be. So at this time, I'd like to have a motion to accept the meeting dates for 2022.
I'll make a motion.
I will let you guys argue about it.
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Hancock.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes. At this point, we'll have a nomination for Board of Education member to be appointed to the City Planning Commission.
I'd like to make the motion to have Pastor Shack represent us at the Planning Commission.
Could I
Mrs.
have-
Matthews?
May I have a second, please?
I'll make that second motion.
Second. I think Mr.
It's good.
Mr. Isgro, put him on the records.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Establishing a Board of Education member compensation in accordance with Board of Education policies and past practices, it is recommended the Hamilton City School District Board of Education serve without compensation for the 2022 calendar year. Now, I know we had discussion during our, before about this. How much, Mr. Hancock, are we, does the state law allow us to receive for compensation?
Mr. Sprague, the state law allows $125 per meeting, up to a maximum of $5,000 per year. It should be noted, and I'm in my 29th year with this district, and prior to my coming, and I'm not sure how far prior, but certainly prior to my coming, the Board of Education has never taken compensation for the service that you provide, and that's very rare in school districts across the state of Ohio. So certainly you're to be commended for voluntarily giving of your time for Hamilton's children.
I'll make a motion that we continue with our practice of not taking any compensation.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Davidson. Mr. Hancock?
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Establishment of service fund for Board of Education members. It is recommended the Board of Education establish a service fund beginning July 1st, 2022 for $20,000 for the fiscal year 2023 to provide the Board of Education members expenses according to Section 3313.15 of the Ohio Revised Code. May I have a motion to, for that service fund?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Before we go forward with that, sir,
Yes.
I'm going to ask Mr. Hancock. Mr. Hancock, would you explain what this service fund would be for?
The service fund would cover the board's expenses to go to any conferences or any specialized training we would have throughout the year. It's rare that we hit any kind of number close to this. In fact, certainly with what's going on in the last couple of years, I'm pretty sure the number is zero. So if you decide not to use the money, it just goes back into the coffers for next year.
And this, that amount is according to Ohio Revised Code?
That's the max
Not
it can
something
be.
we pull out of
No,
the
no,
hat?
no, that
Okay.
is an Ohio Revised Code number based upon size of district.
Okay, thank you.
And that actually could be more than this, correct, at this time? I mean,
No,
No?
that 20,000 is the max number it could
all
go
right.
to.
Okay,
But
we've never, I don't ever recall us ever
No.
being close to
No.
that.
And it's very limited on what we can use.
That's
it
correct.
for.
Yes.
Mhm. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Hancock?
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Approving consultant agreement with the Ohio School Board Association Legal Assistance Fund. Whereas the Hamilton City School District Board of Education wishes to support the efforts of other boards of education to obtain favorable judicial decisions, and whereas the Ohio School Board Association Legal Assistance Fund has been established for this purpose. Therefore, the board hereby resolves to enter into a consultant agreement with the Ohio School Board Association Legal Assistance Fund for the 2022, and directs the treasurer to pay the legal assistance fund $250 for the annual consulting fee. May I have a motion for that?
I'll make that motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Israel.
Second.
Pastor Shack. Any discussion? Mr. Hancock.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
Mrs. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Isgro?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock, I think this is where you get to shine.
So for the next 20 minutes, we'll talk about the tax budget. You have before you the tax budget for the coming year. And it ties directly to the current financial forecast out there. So if you were to go and look at our current financial forecast, you would find that the corresponding numbers in a different format, but the end result is the same for the period of time that is applicable. And that's, generally just the first year or so of the forecast going forward. Something of note, though, that I found that was interesting that we don't talk about. We did a major construction program in this district over a decade ago, well over a decade ago, rebuilding all these buildings or doing major improvements and have very nice facilities thanks to our taxpayers in this community. And that was going to be over 28 years that we were going to pay that back. And we've been able to refinance that debt a couple times, and we did manage to cut 5 years off that payment schedule a couple years ago. That being said, when you pay bonded debt in a school district, the principal payment's done always on December 1st. We have 8 more payments, and we're done. When you start thinking about that. So December 1, 2029 will be the last principal payment for the bonded indebtedness in this district. Now, we're slightly over $50 million still in debt, but we were well over $100 million in debt at one time when we issued this debt for these buildings that in total were over $240 million. So certainly we did get a great bang for our buck when we did this, but also it's nice to see that at the end of the tunnel is coming at the end of the decade with this debt.
By refinancing, how much have we saved?
Oh, we've refinanced 2, maybe 3 times. The last one was in the $6 million range and allowed us to cut some years off, which was really good. Because that way those millage rates go off the books 5 years sooner.
Yeah. And that was just a couple years ago.
Just a couple years ago, it was
Right?
2020. It was during,
Yeah.
pretty much during the beginning of the pandemic. We found the opportunity to go ahead and do that and got it done.
Mr. Hancock, I have to applaud you because you keep obviously a very close eye on that and know when to make those recommendations to us. And
Yeah.
so I thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we're done with refinancing at this point. I can't imagine that we do it again based upon the debt structure, where it's at. Certainly, if you have any questions about the tax budget, it includes all the funds of the district. All the other funds are just based upon historical data. There's no real magic in that. And as far as what the ending balance will be, those are guesses at best. And this meets the obligation through the Ohio Revised Code that we do a tax budget every year. It is not a planning document. I will always say that about a tax budget. It is an archaic form, but we've made this as efficient as possible by tying it to a financial forecast and including it that way. That's all I have for the tax budget.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Hancock? Okay. I need a motion to approve the fiscal year 2023 tax budget.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Mr. Hancock.
Mrs. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Isgro,
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Sprague.
Yes. Our next school board meeting will be on January 27th. We will start the meeting in executive session, moving to open session approximately at 6 o'clock. I'd like to have a motion for adjournment.
Can I just make a correction? I think
Sure.
we have to, we actually have an open session at 4 o'clock, and then we'll
Yep.
move to executive
Yes,
session.
yes.
Before we adjourn, sir, I'd like to point out that I don't know if anybody saw this, I'm sure others did, but there was an article that was done through WKRC, Channel 12, about Pastor Shack's Hype Program
Yep,
and
very nice.
Spooky Nook working together. You can explain it better than I can. It's a great program. Would you just take a second?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
So it's a partnership with Hype and Spooky Nook. We'll be doing the training one-on-one with our kids. So it will give the young people an opportunity to learn just basic life skills, just shaking hand and introducing themselves, resume writing, dressing for success, financial literacy, open up your first bank account, how to save, understanding who all those people are taking money out of your check when you first get it. So,
Who is FICA?
it's people. So helping them understand that, also introducing them to some of them first time, introducing them to college. So we're just going to try to just pack everything in those 8 weeks and that hour and a half to our students. And also they will interview on the spot with members of Spooky Nook to be able to interview for that job. So they'll also learn work culture, just great skills of, if you're not going to be there, don't have your mom call in, be responsible, call in, why aren't you able to be there? So just really helping these kids get connected, life skills, college, as well as financial literacy, all in these 8 weeks. So that's what we plan to do. Great partnership, allow these kids, some of them, it will be their first job. So it'll be a really exciting time for these 8 weeks for these students.
Thank you, ma'am. I just think
Thank
it's a
you.
great thing that you're doing with that
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up.
program.
Yep.
Yes.
Mr. Holbrook, I, since we're taking a little pause here, I
Don't
just
give Mike
want
any
to.
credit. Nothing good about him. I'm just kidding.
I think the board, I know the board appreciates the hard work that you've been putting in, especially the past few days, and your staff, not only the administrators, but the teachers, and all the hard work that's gone in the past few days. Unprecedented times doesn't even begin to describe what we're going through with COVID. But our whole thing is, we want our students to be safe. We want them back in school as soon as we can, but we want them to be safe. And I know this has been a roller coaster since school has come back at the beginning of this year. And it's another big roller coaster this week. So I just want to say thank you for all the work
Yes.
that you guys have
Yeah.
been putting in.
Yes.
It is certainly appreciated, and I wish that we had a crystal ball for these parents to tell them what to expect next, but we don't know what to expect next. So thank you for all the hard work you put in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sprague. I'm very fortunate to work with a large group of very dedicated
Yeah.
people, and we are dedicated to the 9,500 students of Hamilton City Schools, and we'll continue to make difficult decisions, and these are unprecedented times, and so each decision we will look at mutually exclusively from one another and make the best decision for our students. And so that's all we can do right now. Once again, our entire educational community, from our transportation department with our bus drivers to our food service employees, our educational assistants, our teachers, administrators, custodial crews, everybody have worked their tails off for the last 18 months as we've gone through, something that no one has ever dealt with before. And I will tell you this, on the back end of this, I think that we have shown that we absolutely have the ability to lead this district, and the five of you have been extremely supportive of everything we've come to you, but we do that because we have a great team, and our recommendations are based in a lot of thought. So thank you very much.
And it would be remiss if I did not say one more thing, and that is a thank you to our nurses.
Yes,
Across the
absolutely.
district. We
Absolutely.
can only begin to understand the issues they face, the workload they've had, the stress they've gone through trying to track all this. We have some wonderful nurses. And
I'm not
the
sure we
board-
don't need a school recognition month.
Yes,
for
I agree.
those
I
individuals.
agree.
When Mr. Wright was explaining all that they had to do.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
To not just the student itself, but all the people that had to be found and all the tracing that the nurses and other teachers are having to do. It's
incredible.
Wow.
It's a pretty thankless job right now, so if you
Yes.
see any of our nurses in the school district, just.
I think
you know,
we'll know how to recognize
Yeah,
them at this
yeah,
point.
just tell them thank you
Yeah.
for the work they're doing, because they're putting in an absorbent amount of time and effort to try to do what's right for the district and for these kids.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much. It'll be a pleasure serving with you for, most of you for 4 more years, at least 2 more years. So I'm thankful for all of you being here. So, at this point, I'd like to take a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion, sir.
I need a second. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.